Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to tackle one of the most fundamental and, frankly, most useful parts of English, how we compare things. You know, whether you're trying to pick a movie, describe an amazing trip, or argue about who's the best basketball player, you are using this grammar all day, every day, probably without even thinking about it.
So think about it for a second. How do we actually say one movie is better than another, or that a coffee shop is the absolute best in your town? Well, the secret is all in mastering what we call comparative and superlative adjectives. And don't worry, over the next few minutes, we're going to break it all down so it's super clear.
So here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to look at the 3 basic degrees of comparison. Then, we'll get into the simple rules that are all about the size of the word. After that, we'll meet the fun ones, the rebels that break all the rules. And finally, we'll wrap up with some cool structures that'll have you sounding like a total pro.
All right, let's dive in. First things first, we've got to build a solid foundation. Before we even think about adding endings like or est, we really need to get our heads around this idea that every adjective has 3 different degrees. This is the core concept, and once you get this, everything else will just click into place.
Okay, so step 1 is the positive degree. This is just the normal basic adjective, like big or expensive. It just describes something, that's it. Then you have the comparative degree, and like the name says, it compares 2 things, so bigger or more expensive. And finally, we have the superlative. This is for comparing 3 or more things to find the one at the very top, the extreme, the biggest, the most expensive. Let's see how this works in a real sentence. If I say John is tall, that's a simple fact. It's the positive degree. Now, if I say John is taller than Mark, I'm comparing just 2 people. That's our comparative. But if I say John is the tallest in the class, now I'm comparing him to everybody else and he's number 1. That's the superlative. See that nice logical progression? Okay, so now for the fun part, the how-to. How do we actually make these forms? Well, the rules for this almost always come down to one very simple thing, the size of the word. Or, to be more specific, how many syllables it has.
For short, punchy, one-syllable adjectives, think words like fast, tall, or hard. The rule is just beautiful. It's so simple. You just add to compare 2 things and ist to compare 3 or more. Fast, faster, the fastest. Tall, taller, the tallest. Easy, right?
Now let's talk about the little details that make you sound polished. First, you've got to remember to use the word than with comparatives. It's faster than something. And for superlatives, you almost always need the right before it, like in the fastest. And a couple of quick spelling tips. If the word already ends in E, like nice, you just add an R. And for a word with that consonant-vowel consonant pattern, like big, you have to double that last letter to get bigger.
Okay, what about the longer words? You know, the ones with 3 or more syllables. Well, good news, this is actually even easier. We don't add endings at all, because honestly, it would just sound super clumsy. I mean, can you imagine saying beautifuler? No way. Instead, we just put more in front for the comparative and the most for the superlative. More beautiful, the most beautiful. Simple. Now, I know what you're probably asking. What about those tricky 2-syllable words? Well, here is a super reliable rule for a ton of them. If the word ends in Y, like happy or busy, you basically treat it like a short word. All you do is change that Y to an I and then add ER or est. So happy becomes happier and the happiest.
Okay, great job. You've got the main rules down pat. But you know English, it always has to have its exceptions. So let's meet the rebels, the few words that just play by their own rules. And what's funny is, they're some of the most common words we use every single day.
And listen up, because this next point is absolutely crucial. You cannot, I repeat, cannot say gooder or badder. It's probably the #1 mistake that can make a student's English sound unnatural. This is exactly why it's so important to just memorize this next small group of words. And here they are. This is the main list of rebels. The good news is it's pretty short, but you've absolutely got to know them. Good becomes better and the best. Bad becomes worse and the worst. These don't follow any logic or pattern, so you just have to burn them into your memory. Fantastic. You've learned the main rules and you've met the rebels. You're pretty much all set. So for our last section, let's just look at a few extra structures that will add that final bit of polish and make you sound incredibly fluent and natural.
So what do you do when two things are the same? Well, for that, we have this wonderfully simple formula. As. You just stick the regular, plain old adjective right in the middle. For example, John is as tall as his brother. It just means they have the exact same height. It's so simple and so useful.
You know, sometimes just saying something is bigger doesn't quite feel like enough, right? You want to emphasize that it's much bigger? Well, you can do that. You can use words like much, a lot, or far to make your comparison stronger. And on the flip side, you can use a little or a bit to make it weaker. This adds so much flavor to your speaking.
But here is a critical mistake you have to avoid. This is a big one. We never use the word very with a comparative adjective. You can say a car is very fast, absolutely, but you can't say it's very faster. It just doesn't work. The correct word you're looking for is much or far. So this car is much faster.
All right, are you ready for a really cool pro-level structure? This one will seriously impress people. It's a formula that goes like this: the plus a comparative, comma, the plus another comparative. It's this awesome structure that shows how two things change together. For instance, check this out. The more you study, the easier it gets. See that? As one thing increases, the other thing changes as a result. Or how about, the older I get, the wiser I become? It's just such a smart, elegant way to connect two ideas, and it's guaranteed to make your English stand out.
So let's do a super quick review. Comparing two things, use a comparative. Three or more things, use a superlative. For short words, you just add or est. For long words, you use more or the most. And what's the last rule? That's right, memorize those rebels.
And before we finish, let's just lock this in by looking at two more really common traps. First, the double comparative. Never, ever say more taller. The ER already means more, so just taller is perfect. And second, never ever forget the before a superlative. It's not fastest runner, it's the fastest runner.
And there you have it. That's our deep dive into the world of comparatives and superlatives. Now, the absolute best way to master this is to just get out there and practice. Start comparing everything you see. Which, of course, brings me to my final question for you. Is this the most useful grammar rule you've learned? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me today.